Today's speech, as Jeff mentioned, is boom goes the neighborhood. In this country, we spend $675 million on fireworks. Fireworks. $675 million is twice the annual operating budget of Grand Valley State University. Helps put that in perspective. $675 million. And those are the ultimate consumable good. At the end of the day, there's nothing left but ash and smoke. $675 million. Now, there are two schools of thought on whether that's a frivolous expenditure. And I'd like to touch on those schools of thought today, and also to touch on something that's a little bit closer to home here in Michigan. Now, the first argument is that this $675 million is grease. It's grease in the wheels of our consumer spending. And that is a good argument when you think about it. It's just like Christmas. Everybody has this flood of activity during the holidays, and we gauge a lot of our consumer spending around that sort of influx of cash flow. Now, fireworks is a very similar industry. You get these two big flows of cash and interest in this product, usually during January for New Year's, and again in July for 4th of July. But the idea that this cash flow is really integral to our economy and to our consumer spending is a bit of a misnomer, primarily because 99% of all of the fireworks consumed in the US are made in China. And the other 1%, or nearly 1%, is made in Thailand. We have 0.01% of all fireworks used in the US are made here in the US. And you can imagine with our regulations and other things, it's very costly to do so. So we're spending $675 million on a product that's not being manufactured here in the United States. And we're celebrating our Independence Day with a foreign commodity. Now, in Michigan here, the supporting rationale for fireworks sales has been, we want a piece of the pie, right? In Ohio and in Indiana, they had a flush of retailers willing to sell any Michigan resident a firework that wanted to drive south across the border. And in 2011, the state actually made a law that allowed the sale of large fireworks in the state. And not having moved back to the state until recently, in 2014, it was a marked difference that I saw when I moved back. And I thought, wow, I don't remember growing up and hearing this amount of activity or this size of firework in my local neighborhood. And so it's definitely a change that we've seen within our state. And they did that to try and pull that cash flow north over the border and get Michiganders to buy here locally. And that's what they did. $26.4 million was spent here in the state on fireworks alone. It also meant that $1.5 million was spent or gained in taxes and what they call safety fees. And that went straight into the state coffers. So that alone, for a lot of people, is reason enough to continue business as usual. The flip side of that coin is just as complex. There are a lot of other factors that play into this industry within our state. Under the current state's program, the local governments are really kind of hand-tied. They don't get any authority to regulate the use and sale of fireworks in their local governments. And that's primarily around 10 national holidays. And so the state rule trumps the local government and says you have to allow the sale, you have to allow the use of these products in your local governments, basically whether you like it or not. And so that's been one of the huge issues within the state. Now, policy aside, there are plenty of other issues that arise just from the size and scale and power of these new explosive fireworks. Now, if you're a veteran with PTSD, there's a huge concern that those fireworks and the explosions, concussions that come from that can create psychological stress. For pets, there's a lot of people that spend a good amount of money sedating their animals during the 4th of July because you have certain species that are really just prone to kind of going to hide in the corners or get really anxious, and so that's an additional cost. For children, if they're outside enjoying these large fireworks, there's risk of hearing damage. And an interesting tidbit that I found out personally is that if you are a homeowner and you have a fire-related claim on your homeowner's policy, that claim can haunt you for 7 years. It's like breaking mirrors, really bad luck, right? 7 years that stays on your insurance record, whether it was your fault, your neighbors, your cities, anybody around you. you have that. So there are a lot of other issues that come into play when you're talking about this topic. Normally people would make the argument, oh, you don't like it, don't buy them, right? So we have a lot of situations like that in our government and different regulations. If you don't want to participate, that's your choice. However, when it comes to festivities like this, when you're in small residential communities with these large explosives, and you have untrained individuals that are setting these off, you have this plethora of other issues that arise. And without the local control, there's a really hard time to be had trying to maintain peace and harmony and restricting damage that can actually come from some of these firework uses. So right now in our state there is a new bill by a representative named Yanez out of Macomb County, and he has proposed basically getting rid of our 2011 bill and restricting the use of fireworks once again in our state. And there are a lot of people on both sides of this issue, and what they're hoping to do is just repeal the law, but at the very least they're hoping to give some power back to our local governments and also to restrict the size of some of the explosives that can be used in some of our smaller neighborhoods. Now those who want to repeal the law have been called fuddy-duddies or killjoys, but if you have not had to deal with an autistic child or an anxious golden retriever or a combat veteran, then you may not fully understand their concerns. So today I want you to think about both sides of that issue, because it's not going away, and we may be closing up our summer, but New Year's is just around the corner, and this will meet us there with all its sparkling glory. Thank you.